going to do a couple of videos. And the apartment was in that building over there. Isn't that cool? Really nice. You can come out here and eat your lunch. This is my new hood now. And you come in to the kitchen, and the kitchen is good sized kitchen. You got a bench here.
If Charles did walk out of this apartment, where did he go?
The closest person to us is missing.
I'm thinking that someone just has him and he's somewhere. Like, where is he?
The first time that he ever went to Anna's apartment was the last time he was seen alive.
I remember asking her, like, why are you not freaking out?
There were some red flags that started to pop up.
They were extremely concerned. They thought maybe something terrible happened.
Charles Butler's final moments, that's not a good way to go.
Autumn 2012. 56-year-old Florida businessman Charles Butler has just moved back to his hometown, New York City.
This is really nice. I love this city.
He would always talk about how New York City is the greatest place on earth. I'm Molly Butler. I'm Chuck Butler's oldest daughter. Originally, my dad was from Queens. He lived there till early 20s. And he said that he went to Florida to visit a friend and ended up meeting my mom. They fell in love pretty quickly, and they ended up getting married after a few years and having the three of us.
After Molly, Charles and his wife Kim welcome Margie and Maxwell. As the family grows, Charles's career takes off.
My dad was definitely a businessman. He owned a pizza shop, and he was actually the first pizza place in Central Florida to start delivery pizza. Then he started doing insurance. He opened up his own insurance company.
He just, great businessman. Great with finances. Very, very smart. I'm Margie Bolton, and I'm Chuck Butler's middle daughter.
We're in love with architecture in New York City.
His heart was always back in New York. He was always a city boy through and through, for sure.
While Charles's business is growing, in 1997, his personal life is upended when he and his wife Kim decide to divorce.
And then they just separated. Like, they literally got together to have us 3 kids. Like, they just weren't really meant to be together.
We would visit my dad on Wednesday nights and every other weekend. He would always try to just make the time that we had the best that it could be. He always made everything fun. One of my favorite memories of all time was a New York vacation. We were on the subway, and my dad starts singing, "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life." And he gets out onto the street.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to feel sorry for me, even though I'm down and out.
We were younger at the time. I remember my brother was really embarrassed. Like, "Dad, stop."
My heart's bleeding.
I'm Maxwell Butler. I am Charles Butler's son and the youngest of 3.
Oh my God.
It would be so embarrassing for us, but looking back on it, it was just a good time.
In 2012, Charles encourages his oldest daughter, Molly, to follow her career ambitions.
My dad was all about living your dreams. Find out what you're passionate about and make that your business. So I knew that I wanted to be a New York City hairstylist. That was my dream since I was very, very young.
Charles gives Molly a push by suggesting they become roommates.
When I was 24, my dad and I found an apartment in New York City.
Okay. I'm on 78.
And the deal was, my dad would come up for 1 weekend out of every month. Well, he was there 3 weeks out of every month.
Charles's part-time residence in New York coincides with another significant turning point.
After he got divorced from my mom, he was never really open to the idea of marriage. But he said, I wanted to find my queen. So he started getting on a bunch of dating websites. He would always make dating websites in New York, even though he lived in Florida.
In the spring, he connects with a woman from Brooklyn named Anna.
My first impression of her was she's super cute. I could totally see why my dad was into her. He was just smitten by her.
I had never seen my dad like that before. He was in puppy love.
On September 15th, Charles comes to town for one of his regular visits with his daughter and new girlfriend.
On his way up, he gets into his first class seat and he's taking selfies like, I worked hard and now I'm gonna go play hard, and I happen to get the seat next to me is empty, so I get the whole row to myself. He was just so excited about it. He said, you know, this is the way the whole trip is gonna be, just blessings everywhere.
Charles makes plans to spend Monday night with just Molly.
We just had the best conversation about, wow, we're living in New York City and I'm a New York City hairstylist. And I was in a very, loving, healthy relationship, and he was in a loving, healthy relationship. We were just reflecting on all of it. I didn't know at the time it was going to be my last conversation with him, but looking back on it, it was literally the most perfect conversation we could have had. It was just awesome.
The next day, Tuesday, Charles has plans with Anna for a special evening.
Tuesday, he had messaged me and he said, hey, I'm actually going to go out to Anna's house tonight. We're going to watch a movie. I'm going to sleep out there. She lived in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. So this was a big deal that he was going to her house for the very first time.
That night, Charles fills Molly in on the date.
So he was messaging me, oh, it's so sweet. I got a home-cooked meal for the first time in forever. We're having a good time. He was like, I got my cantaloupe for the morning. It's great. She's going to go to work, and then I'll come back home, and I'll meet you in the city for lunch tomorrow. I was trying to book one of my flights back to Florida, and for some reason, when I was booking my flight, my credit card wasn't being accepted. So I was asking him, hey, can you buy my flight to Florida? I'll transfer you the money. He said, yeah, absolutely. Remind me in the morning.
The next day, when Molly doesn't hear from him, she texts her dad about the tickets.
And he told me, I'm sorry, I wasn't feeling good. I had a party. And he called me Honey, which my dad had many nicknames for me, and Honey was never one of them. So it didn't really make sense. So it's just like, okay, please book it. When I left work that day, I went home and my dad wasn't home. And I was trying to call him over and over and over, and his phone was dead. I didn't have her number at this point. I didn't know how to get a hold of her, but I also knew that she was the last person that he was with.
The next day, Molly's concern intensifies.
I started getting calls from his employees at the insurance company down in Florida. And they were asking me, we haven't been able to get a hold of your dad. What's going on?
By Friday night, 3 days since she's heard from her dad, Molly is desperate to make contact with Anna.
I find a way to break into my dad's iPad and find Anna's email. So 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, I get an email back from her finally, and she said, "Hey Molly, he left my house on Wednesday morning and broke up with me, and I haven't heard from him since." My dad was head over heels in love with her. He had told me that he was already looking at rings. So at this point, I know something's up. I email her back and I said, "My dad is officially missing."
We still hadn't heard from him, and we were extremely concerned.
It was just as if he just vanished.
Investigators zero in on Charles's final moments.
That was the last footage that we had of Charles. He just vanished the next day.
And the focus falls on a seemingly friendly face.
Have you had the locks changed since this?
Since that, no.
But we didn't know what the role was that she played. That's when I really, really got suspicious.
How does a man who is completely content with his life just go missing? The only thing Charles Butler's family knows is that he went on a date with his new girlfriend, Anna, and then abruptly ended their relationship.
I'm talking to her and I say, what happened? What was going on? She says, "We had dinner on Tuesday night. Everything was great. He spent the night. On Wednesday, I went to work."
According to Anna, that morning, Charles stayed in bed in her apartment.
She said that in the morning we were texting each other, and then by the afternoon I was getting texts from him. And then he just broke up with me for no reason. And I said, "Oh, can I see the text messages?" And she goes, "No, I deleted all of them already." And I was like, "Wait, what? Why did you delete the text?" And she said, "Well, because he broke up with me and I was heartbroken and I didn't want anything to remember him by, so I deleted all the texts." I remember asking her, "Why are you not freaking out?" It just felt like she was so disconnected from it, and it just felt weird. I could feel something was off, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I said, "I'm gonna call the cops. We need to find my dad." 2 cops showed up. They basically just start taking the information. And I'm telling them every detail that I can give him. His phone was dead for 3 days. I show them the text messages. He was spelling things weird. Certain people will say lowercase OK, and that's how my dad would say it. But this was capital O, period, capital K, period. So just the way that he was texting was weird. It was very obvious that it wasn't him.
I am Christopher Heath. I'm the investigative reporter at WFTV Channel 9 in Orlando, Florida. We covered the disappearance of Charles Butler. NYPD comes in, they look at it. There's no evidence of foul play. There's no tracks saying something suspicious is happening, apart from the fact that nobody's heard from him and the cell phone text messages are a little off-putting. New York City is a giant place, and NYPD have a lot on their plate. They say, we're not throwing up roadblocks and shutting down, the boroughs till we find him, because we just don't have enough here pointing us in that direction.
They kind of were just like, a bunch of people in the city do this all the time. He's probably just hanging out at the beach, trying to just get away from his life. And I was trying to tell them, no, something is happening. This is not okay. This is out of character. One of them, I guess I had pulled on his heartstrings just enough. And he said, "Listen, I'm gonna put out a report. They're not gonna actively look for your dad, but I'm gonna do what I can and figure something out for you. There's not much that we can do, but I'm gonna do what I can do to help you."
Despite the detective's assurances, Molly's concern is rising.
And I started freaking out at this point. The closest person to us is missing, literally just vanished out of her life with no answers.
He doesn't go off the radar. With his kids, he doesn't ignore us. He doesn't take a day or two, no matter how much he parties. When it comes to his kids, like, he's always just there. Something just didn't feel right.
After a few days had passed, my sisters told me that, like, they still hadn't heard from him and that they were extremely concerned and that they thought maybe something terrible happened.
Feeling like they have hit a dead end, the Butler children resolve to take matters into their own hands.
We decided that we were going to have to go the route of a private investigator at this point.
I'm Keith Freeman. I'm a private investigator. I had just come back to Florida from a trip to Central America. I was on my way home when I got the call. I literally turned my car around and booked a flight and went straight up to New York that night.
5 days have passed since anyone has heard from Charles. Freeman begins downloading with Molly.
And I'm telling him all the details. He's like, wow, you know, you did a lot of the legwork for me. Thank you. One of the first things that he had said to me, like, no more contact with Anna whatsoever.
Freeman then digs into the police theory that Charles may have willfully disappeared.
The first step is we check to determine whether Charles had booked a flight through his office, to check his billing records on his credit cards, and found nothing to corroborate the fact that he had made any additional travel plans.
There was no activity anywhere whatsoever. We had all kept trying to call his phone. It was off. We couldn't get through.
With no evidence to support that Charles left on his own accord, Freeman sets out to find him.
The first step is to get as close to where Charles was in his last known location. I was planning to go straight to his girlfriend Anna's house, which is where he was last seen and where the children last believed he was.
When our dad went missing, the last that we had heard was that he was with Anna, so suspicions definitely arose. The first time that he ever went back to her apartment was the last time he was seen alive.
The private investigator hired by the Butler family is on his way to interview the last person to see Charles alive, his girlfriend, Anna.
We went straight to Anna's apartment. We noticed a couple cameras that were located in the apartment building and on the exterior of the apartment building, but we didn't know who owned those cameras and whether they were operational. Anna appeared to be worried about what had happened to Charles, so she was more than happy to talk to us. She described the night that she spent with Charles as perfect. According to Anna, they were in love. So she was extremely concerned about what had happened to him and where he might have gone. No reason to think at that time that there was anything untoward.
But while interacting with Anna, something catches Freeman's eye.
When I entered the apartment, one of the first things I noticed in the hallway on a shelf was a man's watch. It didn't appear to be Charles Butler's watch.
Keith is struck by how flashy the watch is, which doesn't seem to fit Charles's laid-back style.
Keith kept me updated through the whole process, and he had asked her, and she said that it was her ex's watch.
Anna's ex is a 46-year-old Russian immigrant named Mikhail Chernayev.
I asked Anna about her ex-husband. They shared a child together, but they had been divorced for a long time, and Mikhail had been remarried, had another baby. Mikhail had 3 vehicles that he parked in the courtyard behind Anna's residence. So they still maintained enough of a relationship for him to be able to access the parking spaces and use them for his work and his personal cars.
After visiting Anna, Freeman reaches out to the NYPD detectives that offered Molly help. They inform him that they, too, have visited Anna's building. They've discovered that the security cameras there were installed by a resident, and they are working to identify the owner and secure the footage.
Keith kept kind of running into these things where he didn't have access to stuff only the cops did. And since he wasn't a cop, he wasn't able to do some of the stuff. So we kind of had this like stop and go.
Then Molly gets a call from a friend of her father's in Florida.
She told me that a month before he went missing, Anna's ex-husband called my dad from Anna's phone and basically said, she's my woman, stay away from her. It was just the one threatening call and nobody really knew about it.
Based upon the fact that Charles had received what he believed was a threatening phone call from Anna's ex-husband, I was definitely suspicious that Mikhail was involved in Chuck's disappearance.
It's now 2 weeks since the Butlers have heard from their father, and the weight of the investigation is taking a toll.
I've heard people describe anxiety attacks, but I had never suffered from one up until this point. And it would just take me out. Like I would get like tunnel vision, I would hyperventilate, I'd be on my knees like crying. It was just literally like survival mode. The way I coped was with alcohol, and I completely numbed out. And had I not met my now husband after my dad went missing, like I truly believe I would be dead today.
Then, on October 4th, 16 days after Charles went missing, the NYPD gains access to the footage from Anna's building and share the material with Freeman. Does this footage contain clues about Charles Butler's final moments?
There was video footage of Charles and Anna entering the front entrance of the apartment complex at about 7:30 on a Tuesday evening. They went shopping, came back, couple just entering the building normally.
At about 7:30 a.m. the following morning, they spot something else.
We have video evidence of Anna on her cell phone outside the residence, and she finally had to go into work.
Freeman continues watching the footage from the rest of the day.
There is no video of Chuck ever leaving the apartment building after Charles and Anna had last entered her apartment. That was the last footage that we had of Charles.
We know he walked into her apartment. We know he is not seen walking out. What happened?
He just vanished the next day.
The footage does, however, reveal a potential clue.
One of the video cameras clearly showed Mikhail's car being parked in the early morning hours.
Hours later, after Anna leaves, the van pulls out.
He was watching the apartment and waiting for her to leave.
Moments later, a camera in the back of Anna's building reveals something else.
The video also captured Mikhail himself coming and going in the courtyard behind Anna's residence. We were able to see his work van leaving and returning on 2 occasions that morning.
While footage from behind the building is obscured, Mikhail's movements in the courtyard, combined with the fact that Charles never walked out the front door, lead investigators to a startling conclusion.
NYPD believed that Charles had met with foul play and that Mikhail assaulted Charles. And the last time that he left in that van, Charles' body was in the van. The NYPD was seeking search warrants on the vehicles specifically that were in the courtyard.
But days later, disaster strikes.
Once in a 100-year event swooped in. Superstorm Sandy struck.
The storm submerges 250,000 vehicles, including Chernayev's.
Sandy washed away a significant portion of any evidence that would have been necessary to connect Mikhail to Charles Butler's disappearance. It was devastating to the investigation.
When potential evidence linking Mikhail Chernayev to the murder of Charles Butler is destroyed in Superstorm Sandy, it's a crushing blow to the investigation.
Superstorm Sandy was devastating to New York and the people in New York. Makes it really challenging for the NYPD to be able to follow up on anything. They were at a standstill on the case for several months.
5 months into the investigation, Freeman knows the likelihood that Charles is alive is slim.
The words that Keith had used, it's like, your dad's not coming back. Like, he's officially, like, gone. I still can't tell you any answers, but we do know that he's gone.
In my teenage years, my dad and I would just kind of butt heads, I think. Like, we didn't always have the best relationship. I remember the last trip he made me get out of the car and give him a hug, which was very unusual because we didn't do that a lot. But we hugged and told each other we loved each other, and that was the last time I saw him.
Mikhail Chernayev is still the NYPD's lead suspect, but there's no evidence to charge him with murder.
NYPD cared about this case, but he was a missing person. They didn't have any evidence to really lead them to anything else.
There's not the physical evidence. There's not a pool of blood somewhere. There's no body.
In the face of a stalled investigation, Keith Freeman pitches an idea to the Butler children.
We decided to talk to the media in hopes of gaining additional information about what had happened to Charles.
The private investigator had gone, I think, as far as he could and asked if we'd be willing to take a look at this case.
If Charles did walk out of this apartment, where did he go? He didn't have a car in New York City. He would have either had to take a taxi or public transportation.
Where the trail for us goes cold is once he arrives at Anna's apartment. We needed to go see some of these places. We needed to try and get an interview with Anna since she was the last one to see him alive. She decides, yeah, she'd like to talk to us. Let's see if she'll shine some light on these last couple of hours.
And we loved each other, and we wanted to spend our life together.
Charles and Anna went to her apartment. The next morning, Anna says she gave Charles a key to the apartment and left for work. That would be the last time she or anyone else who knew Charles Butler would see him alive.
I gave him the key. He closed upper lock. So it means that he left.
Have you had the locks changed since this?
Since that, no.
Why not get your locks changed? But she hadn't. It hadn't even crossed her mind. Later on in the interview, I asked about when she got back, had he made the bed? And she couldn't remember. And just some of her reactions were, to me, there were some red flags that started to pop up. We knew Mikhail was a character within this larger story. When I asked about Mikhail, she seemed to dismiss the idea that Mikhail was somehow involved. She said, he's not behind this.
As Christopher Heath is reporting his story, another news organization reveals surprising information about Anna and Mikhail.
we found out that she basically started dating her ex again. That's when I really, really got suspicious. We didn't think that maybe she was involved in what happened, but she might have been involved in protecting Mikhail from getting caught.
Christopher Heath's report airs in late February of 2013.
The next day, we had a different response from the NYPD. We had the involvement of the state police. We had the involvement of senior detectives in Brooklyn and Manhattan.
With intrigue swirling around Anna, the NYPD turns to a specialist.
I'm Konstantin Papadopoulos, a detective with the New York City Police Department, assigned to investigate the Charles Butler missing persons case. We really wanted to know, was Anna involved in any way of Mr. Butler's disappearance, or if she had prior knowledge of it or any of that. We wanted Anna polygraphed.
Eight months after Charles Butler disappeared, an NYPD detective is interrogating his girlfriend, Anna.
I needed to find out if she had any prior knowledge of Mr. Butler's disappearance or if she had any involvement in his disappearance. So when I spoke to Anna, her demeanor was very cooperative. Anna told me she wanted to find out what happened to him as well. I asked about her ex-husband, Mikhail. She met Mikhail in Russia. They also have a son in common, but they did have their differences. According to Anna, he was a very jealous person, questioned her a lot about different things, even though they were not together. He was still jealous. During my course of the interview with Anna, she didn't believe Mikhail had something to do with his disappearance, but you don't know what's going on in someone's head, you know? At the end of the polygraph, she came up, no deception indicated. She had no involvement in Charles Butler's disappearance, so she was in the dark.
With no additional insight or evidence, the investigation is at a standstill. But the following day, the NYPD gets an unexpected call from officials in upstate New York.
There was a fisherman whose boat had broken down in an infrequently traveled area. The fisherman got out of his boat near the shoreline and stumbled upon a body.
When the body was found upstate New York, that DNA was matched with the DNA that the case detective submitted. Then they could ultimately say, yes, this is Charles Butler that was found by the lost fisherman.
After 8 months, Charles Butler has been found. For investigators, the discovery of the body is the first piece of solid evidence in the case.
Charles is found under suspicious circumstances. So now the investigation is going to change. So at this point, the detective calls me up and asks if I could polygraph Mikhail. He voluntarily came, yes. He was very cooperative. He seemed enthusiastic to help. He's a middle-aged man, a medium to large build, brown hair, balding a little bit.
Without revealing that Charles's body has been found, Papadopoulos begins his routine.
Whenever you interrogate somebody that's suspected of a crime, it's a long process. First off, with Mikhail, I built some rapport with him. We sat down, we spoke about common things, you know, what he did for a living, where is he from in Russia, when did he come to the United States, you know, questions like that. Just try to build rapport and see where his mindset's at for the polygraph later on. I asked Mikhail the regular questions that any investigator would ask him. Do you know him? Have you ever met him? Mikhail denied that he knew Charles. He explained to me that he knew that Anna was dating somebody, but he didn't know who it was.
Then Papadopoulos suddenly produces a document, a map of the exact area where Charles's body was found.
The demeanor that he had quickly changed. He was very nervous. At this point, everything came crashing around Mikhail.
When confronted with a map of the location where Charles Butler's body was discovered, lead suspect Mikhail Chernayev begins changing his story.
I'm sure Mikhail thought in his mind that, you know, okay, as long as they don't find Mr. Butler, I'm gonna be okay. But Mr. Butler was found, and then everything came crashing around Mikhail.
Before the polygraph begins, Mikhail begins speaking freely about Charles and Anna.
Upon questioning by the NYPD, he confessed that he was in love with Anna, and he was jealous over anybody having a relationship with her, that in his mind, he went to the apartment to confront Charles about the relationship.
Mikhail said he walked over to Anna's place. After he observed her leaving for work, approximately 7:30 a.m., he knew that Charles would be home, knocked on the door, a confrontation ensued.
According to Mikhail, he pushed his way into the apartment. Charles screamed at him. Mikhail asked him to be quiet. When he didn't, Mikhail punched him in the face and knocked him down. He said that Charles still would not stop screaming. Mikhail took a knife from the kitchen counter, stabbed Charles, and suffocated him. Mikhail's explanation was that he was possessed by a demon.
We never got to the polygraph examination because during the pretest interview, Mikhail confessed to Mr. Butler's demise. Mikhail told me that he didn't want Anna to find out that he had any involvement in this. So he took Charles Butler's body to a location upstate where he used to go on vacation, a secluded area. And that's where he dumped Charles Butler's body. Charles Butler's final moments, that's not a good way to go.
Papadopoulos then questions Mikhail about the bizarre messages that were sent to Anna and the Butler children after Charles was dead.
Charles Butler's cell phone had a lock feature on it. So I asked Mikhail, I go, how did you use Mr. Butler's cell phone? Because you were texting people. Mikhail clearly said it was easy. I just took the SIM card out and put it in my phone, and I was able to use the phone. So I asked him, why did you do this to Mikhail? And he said to trick everybody.
Mikhail is arrested for the murder of Charles Butler. The following day, investigators go in search of additional evidence to bolster their case.
the NYPD fluoroceled looking for blood samples and were able to find a very small drop of blood in the kitchen that matched Charles Butler.
Chernayev is indicted on charges of second-degree murder. Months later, he recants his confession, and the case moves to trial. And again, the woman at the center of the deadly love triangle becomes an object of curiosity.
She got asked to testify for both sides. You could tell, like, she was in a really weird position. I watched her face when they showed his confession video, and it was the first time she ever heard it. Like, it dawned on her. It took a year and a half for her to even connect it in her own mind that he was the one that killed my dad. Like, he did it. And what he was telling her at the time was that he was in jail in place of her. He told her that they were trying to arrest her for killing my dad, and he's taking the blame for her. I feel like she was innocent in it. I feel like she was innocent almost to a fault, but that she was tricked by him too.
On September 29th, 2016, almost 4 years from when Charles was killed, there is a verdict.
A jury comes back and finds him guilty of murder. The judge handed down a sentence of 25 years to life.
With the trials behind us, I felt like we were finally able to create our own closure, if you will. The grieving process is something I still struggle with. I'm grateful for the time that we did have together because he raised me to be the man I am today.
Monday night, we had that really awesome conversation. I think that trip, he was the most excited I had ever seen. And I think part of it was because, of course, he's coming back to the city that he loves.
Saturday afternoon in the city, street festival. How do you like this neighborhood, huh?
And he was going to see the woman that he fell in love with and get ready for a really epic weekend in New York.
The last time that he had texted me, I was supposed to go get air in my tires. He had texted me, like, make sure you get air in your tires. My dad was my best friend, and any question that I ever asked was never off the table. What you couldn't see in yourself, like my dad could see it in you. He was our best friend. Like, he was my closest friend. The bond was there.
In case y'all didn't know, it's Black Girl Sunday. Celebrate your girl or not, it's whatever.
We hear about a lot of missing children, but there was something really different about Alexis. She was this social media star.
That was one of the alarming things. Does she have a stalker? Somebody following her?
One of the videos captures Alexis Murphy's vehicle pulling in. You can't really tell who's driving.
It was definitely unlikely that Alexis drove her car to some random movie theater in Charlottesville. It was still a lot of questions going through my head. What happened? Where is she?
Alexis has virtually disappeared off the face of the earth. It's just full throttle forward.
It's August 2013. In the rural enclave of Shipman, Virginia. Go. 17-year-old Alexis Murphy is preparing for senior year at Nelson County High School.
She definitely was a person that could brighten your day on your worst day. My name is Trina Harmon Murphy, and Alexis is my great niece. She was just an incredibly humble, genuine person. She was the total package.
I'm Jasmine Murphy, and I'm Alexis' cousin. She was looking forward to her senior year playing volleyball. I did assistant coaching with her for 2 years. Seeing her play and playing against her at the open gyms, she had definitely developed and grown as a player.
Hey, where my Pacers fans at? Oh, I was serious. None? None at all.
She was definitely attached to her cell phone for sure. If the battery was dying, she would plug in multiple extension cords so that she could still move about the house and take the phone with her.
Okay, my life is pretty much complete right now. Whoever invented this, thank you so much.
Alexis's journey to the cusp of adulthood began on June 5th, 1996, when she was born into a loving, extended family.
Even when she was a baby, she was just a funny, outgoing person. She was always getting into stuff, but I definitely saw her grow up. She was definitely smart. She could come to me for things, or if I had clothes that were too small, hand me down to Alexis. She loved them.
She grew up around most of her cousins, so cousins are more like brothers and sisters.
As she got older, you saw her get more interested in music, dancing. She was forever recording herself dancing. If I was dancing in the car, she would just laugh at me and was like, don't ever do that again. Just a joy. She loved her music and dancing. She definitely did.
Alexis and her friends spend their free time at a local destination, Liberty Gas Station.
The gas station that has the McDonald's connected to it was definitely like the teenage hangout spot.
Alexis went to that gas station every single day. It's a rural county, you know, the gas station is just kind of where kids hang out.
Alexis's social world, however, extends far beyond Shipman, Virginia.
My name is Katie Love, and I was an investigative reporter covering the Alexis Murphy case. In 2013, we're just starting to understand the power of Twitter, and Alexis got it right away. You knew what she was up to because she would tweet it.
In case y'all didn't know, it's Black Girl Sunday. Celebrate your girl. We're not. It's whatever.
The average teenager probably has a couple hundred followers. Alexis was completely different. We're talking about 12,000 people who just wanted to know what she was up to. She was this social media star.
Gotta go feed the dogs. Don't nobody feel like doing that? I your ass here. I haven't even named whatever.
We would joke about it, and she was like, I don't even know how they're following me. I'm like, well, they obviously like...
She knew that was the last time that Jasmine would ever see Alexis. Later that weekend, in the early morning hours of Sunday, August 4th, Alexis's family notices something peculiar.
Alexis's grandma realizes that she's missed her 11 p.m. curfew, which is really strange. Alexis never missed curfew, was always in the house on time, and they have no idea where she is. That day, she left the house in her dad's car, the white Nissan, and the car is nowhere to be found.
Of course, her grandmother, immediately started to call her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Alexis was always tapped into that phone. When she didn't answer it, that was a big clue. I thought she'd had a car accident. That was my first thought. Her mom works night shift at the post office, so she came home from work that morning and immediately went to the sheriff's office and filled out a missing persons report.
I'm William Everett Mays, Jr. I go by Billy. I was investigator lieutenant with Nelson County Sheriff's Office. I get a phone call, and it's brought to my attention by one of the deputies with Nelson County that this young lady didn't return home. The deputies had already spoke with the family and got a lot of information that I needed to start my investigation. Teenagers, a lot of times, tend to be a little secretive about what they're doing. We have to take into account that maybe she is with someone that she doesn't want you to know about, or she's went somewhere that she doesn't want you to know.
As Lieutenant Mays gets up to speed on the case, he's alarmed by Alexis's large Twitter following.
She had a lot of followers on social media, but with that, there's the downside. It's just a breeding ground for predators. But just in a matter of hours, I had a huge resource available. We had social media experts from the FBI that were devoted solely to that. That was critical in this case.
I remember coming through her social media and seeing some of the things people would post, like, oh, I would like to meet you, or you may see me sooner than you think. That was one of the alarming things. Does she have a stalker? Is somebody following her?
As investigators dig through the large digital trove, they spot one tweet that points to her plans for early Saturday evening.
As she was posted throughout the day, one of those said she was Berg-bound, which means she was headed to Lynchburg, which is a city just south of Lovingston.
Her family explains to investigators the enthusiasm behind the 6:04 p.m. post.
She had an appointment for her senior pictures the following week, and she loved hair and makeup. So her plans that day were to go to Lynchburg and buy hair to do her hair extensions for her senior pictures. Her mom gave her the lecture on not spending too much money on hair, and she told them she loved them and got in her car and drove away. That was her very last tweet.
Police reach out to the Lynchburg store she was headed to, but shopkeepers say she never arrived. Whether or not she ever set foot in the city is a mystery.
The million-dollar question is why? Why she deviated from that plan, and was that voluntary?
To track her movements, Mays subpoenas Alexis's cell records. But while he waits for the results, late that afternoon, Trina devises a plan to find her using an app called Find My Phone.
Oak Ridge Estates was the last location that the Find Me app on her phone actually provided. It's a vast piece of property. It's several thousand acres. So a lot of resources from the sheriff's office and the state police are focused on that area. There was a huge gathering of people. There was tons and tons of people willing to help.
By 6:30, there was a state trooper helicopter in the air looking for her car. By 7:15, the first FBI agent was on the scene. You're on a pendulum between hope and despair.
A suspect on the road to Lynchburg.
It almost made you afraid to even be out at night alone.
And clues from Alexis's final moments lead police to the end of a dirt road.
It looks like something out of a horror movie.
In late July, days before Alexis disappeared, her aunt dropped by her home.
It was just a typical visit, and she was just her happy-go-lucky self, you know. We said our goodbyes as always. Love you, see you later, and that was it. I mean, the normal moments are the ones that are really important, you know. Lord knows I wish I had known that was the last time I was going to see her.
Just hours after Alexis is reported missing, an app called Find My Phone leads police to a 4,800-acre estate called Oak Ridge.
They're searching areas thinking perhaps there was a vehicle accident, that she had ran off the road. We also had contacted the state police for their helicopters to come in and fly the area. So a lot of the attention was focused in that area.
After hours of searching, investigators begin to question the accuracy of the phone tracking app.
Law enforcement find nothing, so it kind of leads them back to square one. That was like this alarm of what is going on.
Perhaps she's establishing a little bit more independence and she wants a little more privacy, as most teenagers do. But her family was very adamant that that was not the case. This probably is bigger than what we think.
With Alexis's phone records still pending, authorities widen their search radius and call in more help as Mays takes a darker view of the situation.
It's becoming more evident to me that this is probably not a defiant juvenile and this is probably not an accident. So time is of the essence, it's critical. And I was basically the one overseeing all this. We reach out to the Virginia State Police for their special agents, and we probably had close to 50, 60 special agents from the FBI there, which was incredible.
I definitely saw that this was something serious now, more serious than we had thought before.
As the investigation intensifies, the Murphy family's plight explodes into the spotlight.
In the newsroom, we hear about a lot of missing children, but there was something really different about Alexis and how strange it was for this girl to suddenly have no trace.
Family members say 17-year-old Alexis Murphy is a good girl, star volleyball player at Nelson County High School, a devoted daughter who always answers her phone and text.
She became everybody's daughter, everybody's niece, everybody's granddaughter.
But Laura Murphy has been unable to contact her daughter since August 3rd.
Somebody knows something. If it's the littlest thing that they may not think is important, it is.
It allowed people to connect with her family. It was amazing to see how many people organized search parties after search parties looking for Alexis.
My name is Mark Egeman. I work for the Virginia Department of Emergency Management as a search and rescue coordinator. Watching the story develop and grow in the news until we get that call from state police. And then that's when we become involved and it becomes an active mission for us. You have a tremendous amount of woods and country to have to search on foot.
The whole community has mobilized at this point. This was very out of the norm for Nelson County.
It's unclear at this point if investigators have found anything of use for them as they continue to search for Alexis Murphy.
In the midst of this publicity, law enforcement scrutinizes the road Alexis would have taken to Lynchburg. In recent years, it has been the site of a rash of mysterious crimes.
Last count, I believe it's 32 young women and men that are missing on some portion of the 29 corridor. There's something going on for sure on the 29 corridor that needs attention.
Locals attribute this violence to a single anonymous culprit.
When I first started working for Nelson County Sheriff's Office, I had heard about the 29 stalker. There were some young ladies that had been abducted along Route 29 from, say, Albemarle all the way up to Barboursville. You start to wonder if this is something that is connected. Yeah, it was a scare.
It almost made you afraid to even be out at night alone. It was definitely one of those things you kind of opened your eyes even more.
But soon, on Monday, August 5th, 2 days after she vanished, Mays receives some crucial documents: Alexis's cell phone records.
We started looking at the cell phone information and the cell phone records, and were able to determine that Oak Ridge that we didn't need to be there. The phone was pinging somewhere else. One of those hits indicated she was in the Liberty gas station. That's where the focus went at that point. We were able to go and pull that video surveillance of Alexis being there.
Could this footage be the key to finding Alexis?
She was there, and she was there alone. So we were trying to connect all those dots and put those pieces of the puzzle together. That's the last known ping on her cell phone. We knew that this was probably the last known place that she was when she went missing.
In the case of Alexis Murphy, Police have obtained surveillance footage from the Liberty gas station on the day she disappeared, after her last tweet around 6 p.m. Could this video hold clues to her whereabouts?
It was somewhere around 7 p.m. What I seen when we watched the video was Alexis coming into the store to pay for her gas. She looked fine when she was inside to me. She didn't appear to be distressed or distraught or in any kind of danger or scared, and she was there alone. There was really nothing that looked out of place. And then she exits the gas station. She could be very close when she left. It was somewhere around 7 p.m., and I believe it was 7:17 p.m. It was the last activity on her phone. So we have roughly a 17-minute window there that we're trying to figure out what happened. We were starting to canvass the area, the perimeter around the Liberty gas station, talking to every resident there. We're looking for this young lady and her phone. There is a car lot directly across Route 29. We were searching that area and searching trunks of cars just because we didn't know.
Law enforcement finds no sign of Alexis or her car or phone. But on August 6th, 3 days after she went missing, a tipster contacts police about a major discovery in Charlottesville.
Tuesday evening, someone just who had watched the news and had heard about Alexis Murphy's disappearance had noticed this vehicle sitting there and called us. Said, hey, this car is here in Charlottesville. So, of course, we drop everything. We haul freight to Charlottesville. It was Alexis Murphy's car. I wasn't expecting it to be found in Charlottesville. Wasn't close to Nelson County.
The city of Charlottesville lies about 40 miles north of Alexis's hometown of Shipman and 70 miles north of Lynchburg.
It was the Carmichael Cinema area. Then, of course, the media is there before I get there. And it's a circus. It's ridiculous. It made it very difficult for us to get in there to do what we needed to do.
It was leaked on social media that the car was found before the police ever had the opportunity to call and tell us.
It was definitely unlikely that Alexis drove her car to some random movie theater in Charlottesville. If she said she was going to the Berg, then that's where she was going, to Lynchburg. It's odd to end up the opposite direction in which you said you were going. But when I got the news that they had found her car, I wanted something. Some kind of answer to, besides, okay, they found her car. Is she in there? Or what's in the trunk?
My biggest fear was when we popped the trunk, Alexis was going to be in the trunk. And when we do open the trunk, she isn't. Which, it was a relief, but at the same time, it's like, where is she? And her phone is not there.
So you go from, yay, she might still be alive, to, okay, where do we go from here? This is a big piece of the puzzle, but Alexis has virtually disappeared off the face of the earth. You can't find their phone. It's just full throttle forward.
Determined to figure out how the car got there, Mays obtained surveillance footage from surrounding businesses.
There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of CCTV that we're going through. And luckily, one of the videos captures Alexis Murphy's vehicle pulling in on Sunday night at around, I believe it was around 10 o'clock. It's a real grainy video. You can't really tell who's driving. You can just tell that there is a figure that gets out of it. And the subject walks out of frame. It was a creepy scene.
Could this mysterious figure be Alexis? Despite her bold personality, her family thinks otherwise.
She was definitely scared of the dark, so her to walk off in the dark without a light, no, was definitely unlikely to be Alexis.
While the individual does not appear to be Alexis, their identity is unknown.
You can't identify if it's a man, a woman, age, anything. It's not Alexis driving the car, but we have no idea who this person was. Search teams are still out there looking for any clues of where Alexis had gone.
Desperate to understand the mystery figure's connection to Alexis, investigators re-examined the footage from the gas station.
When you look at the video going back, there was an individual that held the door open for her. And there was some it appeared, small talk.
There was something really interesting, and they see something they had never seen before. There was a man holding the door for Alexis Murphy. And it looks like on the footage that there's some sort of conversation between Alexis and this unidentified man. So suddenly, there is a new person of interest in the case. So we're starting to wonder if it's the same person in Charlottesville.
In hopes of identifying a man seen in surveillance footage, police in the Alexis Murphy investigation race to where it was recorded, Liberty Gas Station.
So there was a question of whether that was someone who maybe was involved in Alexis's disappearance. The attendants who work there were able to easily say, this is a guy named Randy Taylor. He was not someone who just kind of slid under community radar. This is a distinctive man who has this huge Daffy Duck tattoo on his neck. The gas station attendant knew Randy because he has a car that's very distinctive, this camo truck.
Once Lieutenant Mays learns of Taylor's vehicle, he digs deeper into the footage.
The cameras, unfortunately, were not all over the parking lot. But there is a camera that's on a portion of the parking lot, and it catches just a tiny piece of Route 29 just a few minutes after Alexis exits the gas station. You see this camouflage vehicle and Alexis Murphy's white cars directly behind it. She was actually going north towards Charlottesville, and now she's following him.
The big question is we have no idea why she followed him, which is really strange. What's going on?
Mays sizes up the investigation's new prime target.
We've got to come up with a game plan. Let's figure out what the best avenue of attack is as far as the interview with him, and let's pin him down.
Investigators discover that Taylor lives in a camper just off of Route 29. 4 days after Alexis disappeared, Mays heads towards the property.
We had put him under 24-hour surveillance. I was told by the other agents where this camper was located, but I couldn't find it. The grass was so high around the driveway. It goes into this property. So I finally locate this road. We pull in, and we're basically walking up to this thing. It's just an old abandoned house. Then there's this blue and white camper. It looks like something out of a horror movie. I remember knocking on Randy's door, and he opens the door. We explained to Randy why we're there. And I basically asked him about being at the Liberty gas station. We were looking for this young lady, and he said he had no knowledge. He's never seen her, didn't know her, wasn't at the Liberty gas station, had no idea what we were talking about. And that was an important part of the case for me because I knew then that he was hiding something. But once we confront him with the evidence, there's a video of him holding the door for her, and things changed. He told us he ran into her at Liberty. He admits that she was there.
Without prompting, Taylor launches into a story.
He even goes on to elaborate that he met Alexis Murphy probably a year prior to this at a car wash. He was smoking some marijuana, and she had made a comment about the marijuana. According to him, she was talking about how it smelled like some really good stuff. So when he saw her at the Liberty gas station on August 3rd, he knew who she was.
When pressed again about the August 3rd encounter, Taylor offers an astonishing account.
Also, he's telling us that she's with a black guy. And they're talking about a marijuana sale. And Randy wanted to buy from the guy that she was with. So they come up with an agreement and they leave, and he goes to his camper. Alexis comes and this other gentleman follows suit. He buys marijuana. They have some small talk, shoot the bull, and they leave together. That's the last he's seen of her. I didn't believe the story, but we could not rule out the possibility of someone else being involved.
To validate Taylor's story, Mays files for a warrant to search his trailer. Alexis's social media is also scoured in search of the man in Taylor's description.
They got the picture off of some Facebook page or something, but very quickly we're able to identify this guy as Damien. Damien was a resident of Nelson County, but he leaves town shortly after Alexis Murphy is missing and goes to Alabama. That was alarming. That was enough for us to further investigate this.
I knew Damien. We went to high school together. So Alexis' relation with Damien, I don't know exactly what it was. I knew he worked at McDonald's at the time. She always was at McDonald's getting a frappe. Was he one of the last people to see her? Did he have something to do with it? Did he know about it? It was still a lot of questions going through my head. What happened? Where is she?
Police uncover disturbing clues.
We see that a fingernail is embedded into the carpet. Hearing this kind of evidence, your stomach just turns.
Authorities close in on a suspect.
I don't think he expected the rain of hell that came down on him.
And cryptic circumstances envelop Alexis's final moments.
So it leaves me with the million-dollar question, how did you get her there?
Investigators have learned that a friend of Alexis, who left town after she disappeared, may have been the last person to see her alive.
So myself and Special Agent Pittman with the FBI, we flew to Alabama. We made arrangements to meet with Damien and talk to him in further detail about what his involvement may or may not have been.
As they sit down to interrogate Damien, Mays asks him about his whereabouts on the weekend Alexis vanished.
He was in Nelson County staying in a hotel with his girlfriend. He said he was at the blood bank donating plasma, and this was right around the time that she went missing. But he wasn't anywhere close to where Alexis was in Nelson County. So he wasn't even in the area when she went missing. He said he had no involvement whatsoever.
After the interrogation, Mays returns to Virginia and digs into Damien's account of the weekend of August 3rd.
We were able to corroborate his timeline and his alibis. There was nothing. There was no dots to connect with Damien. It was just another ploy for Randy to throw the investigation off.
After clearing Damien, critical information in the case against Randy Taylor comes through.
We were able to secure a search warrant for his camper. We executed that search warrant. We go in, we explain to Randy why we're there, and we pull him out of the camper. The forensic techs go in and start the evidence recovery process.
They go to his house, his trashy dump of a camper. It was a bit messy. Inside, they find evidence. We see that a fingernail is embedded into the carpet, but they find a hair extension and then a diamond stud. Hearing this kind of evidence, your stomach just turns.
It wasn't something good when I heard that they found all those things there, because those are things that any girl, you're not going to just let that go. It had to be taken from you. Alexis didn't have false nails, things like that, it's not going to just come out easy.
The evidence is sent for DNA testing. Then, authorities search the grounds around the camper for Alexis's body.
Behind the property, there was just all kinds of garbage and trash that had been piled up, and there's a mountain. And behind the house, there's a trail that goes up the mountain. We searched the side of the mountain to see if he's taken her up the mountain. It was a very difficult search. You know, everybody's getting ate up by ticks and chiggers. We blanketed that side of the ridge and we have nothing. No indication that anybody had been up there, no four-wheel tracks, nothing.
Her cell phone was still missing and she's still missing. We were still hopeful that we could find more evidence. So I actually reached out to administrators with the Department of Corrections and inquired a little bit more about these cell phone dogs.
We learned that law enforcement is using canine dogs to sniff a very specific adhesive found in phones. We start to see canines sniffing Randy Taylor's camper. These law enforcement dogs are smelling some sort of scent, and they find Alexis Murphy's phone just 70 feet from Randy Taylor's camper. It's broken. It looks like someone's tried to take out the battery. Finding Alexis's white iPhone was the nail in the coffin.
This was her lifeline. I have that on your property, and she's not here. Something terrible has happened. So I really think that pretty much sealed the deal. I went ahead and arrested him for abduction with intent to defile. He looked like a ghost, like a deer in headlights. I don't think Randy expected the rain of hell that came down on him as fast as it came down on him.
After the arrest, Mays seeks out the Murphy family for a difficult discussion.
So a decision was made to set the family down and tell them we don't think she's alive and we want to go forward with a murder charge. And to do that, we had to have their support and understanding that she is dead.
I think we had to agree with the evidence that was presented before us, because obviously the evidence was there, right? And we can't find her. She has had no contact with her family. That was kind of the defining moment to know that chances are she wasn't here anymore.
As the case heads to trial, police make Randy Taylor an offer.
Before the trial, law enforcement offered Randy Taylor a deal, 20 years if you just tell the family where Alexis Murphy's body is. His response, give me 10 and I'll tell you where she is. It's like really unbelievable.
Months later, in May 2014, at the Nelson County Courthouse, the first-degree murder trial of Randy Taylor begins. While the prosecution has a wealth of evidence, the lack of a corpse presents a problem.
This was an unprecedented case in Virginia. To try someone for murder with no body, it's very hard to prosecute without a body.
In May 2014, the murder trial of Randy Taylor commences. On behalf of the state, prosecutor Anthony Martin delivers the opening statement.
The prosecution was able to paint this really violent scene with the amount of evidence that was just found inside of his camper. Something horrible has happened.
But in their opening argument, Taylor's attorney takes aim at the prosecution's assertions.
The defense was constantly saying, there's no body, there's no murder weapon. They kept hitting on it.
His explanation of the hair extensions was the police planted it, but we knew that he was full of it.
After opening statements, the prosecution unloads its most potent evidence, an item discovered on a deeper search of Taylor's camper after his arrest.
One thing I will never forget is Randy Taylor's bloody t-shirt. Seeing the t-shirt covered in not just a little bit, but a lot of blood, you could tell the jury's mood suddenly shift.
Attorneys reveal the results of DNA testing on items found inside the camper.
It was her DNA on the shirt. It's a mix of blood and saliva and fluid. We have her DNA on these hair extensions that were found. They're glued and woven into the hair. They don't just fall out. That indicated to us that there was a violent struggle that took place.
We know that there was nothing casual about this encounter, that it was extremely violent.
After closing arguments, the litigators turned the case over to the jury. Within hours, the jurors announce that they've reached a verdict.
I was at volleyball practice. I remember looking online and seeing guilty. And I just busted out in tears. It was a relief, like kind of a joy for us, because you're going away. You're not going to hurt anybody else.
It was a few moments of the weight has been lifted. We have some type of justice. And we did celebrate, but the next morning we still woke up to the same reality. We still don't have her.
We convict him on both counts of abduction with intent to defile and first-degree murder. And as the jury is leaving to go sentence him, Randy stood up in open court and said, "I'll take the original deal of 20 years and tell you where she is." And of course, it's too late at that point. He ended up with 2 consecutive life sentences and is currently at Red Onion spending the rest of his life in prison. So,
in the case of Taylor's continued silence, anger and mystery linger over what transpired in Alexis's final moments captured on video.
One of the big mysteries of this case is why we see Alexis Murphy's car following Randy Taylor's. We have no idea why she followed him. Somehow he gets this beautiful, talented young girl to follow him to his trashy dump of a camper. I still can't even wrap my mind around it.
Billy Mays believes the footage tells the story of a drug deal gone bad.
I think Randy had some conversation with her in the parking lot prior to coming into the store about some marijuana that he had. So I really, truly think that she followed Randy back to his camper in the thought of purchasing marijuana.
I find it impossible to believe that she would have voluntarily gone anywhere with Randy Taylor. Alexis didn't have to go with Randy Taylor if she really wanted weed. So it leaves me with the $1 million question: how did you get her there?
Despite Taylor's conviction, he refuses to reveal the location of Alexis's remains.
I can't go put flowers on my niece's grave. I can't take little pink trinkets, which was her favorite color, to put at her grave. So I will continue to look for her until I'm either not here or she's found.
Whether or not Alexis's body is ever found, her family and community will never forget her.
I still think about Alexis all the time. Her face is on my refrigerator. I have a t-shirt with her face on it. My daughter, who I now have, will know about Alexis. There was such a bright future ahead for this young lady.
I grieve the what ifs the most, you know. Where would she have gone to college? What would she have majored in? Would she have met the love of her life, in school? Would she be married? Would she have kids?
It's still unreal because it's like, how can this happen to her? You kind of sit back there and wonder, what if she stayed home that day? What if? It's always that question of what if.
And they'll always remember their final moments with Alexis.
I remember we had went to the Chinese place to get dinner, and I took her to McDonald's to get a frappe. It's one of the things that I always think about, especially when it comes up the anniversary date of her going missing.
The last time I saw Alexis was the weekend before she was abducted. I mean, the normal moments are the ones that are really important. Family gatherings and parties and celebrations and regular moments. We said our goodbyes as always. Love you, see you later, and that was it. Lord knows I wish I had known that was the last time I was going to see her.
She slept good and that we can talk soon.
All you have is the lifeless body of a 22-year-old. Why does someone do this?
The most gut-wrenching part was seeing Heather's hand still grasping the sheet.
And I just remember screaming, somebody's killed my daughter.
You have to look at these videos and hopefully gain something from it.
I think everybody was crushing on Heather.
Who do you tell your secrets to? Now you tell your secrets to your cell phone.
It was one of the most shocking videos I have ever seen in my career. I was watching the final moments of the life of Heather Nicole Maples.
"22-year-old aspiring college student Heather Maples is preparing to leave her hometown in Texas to pursue her dreams in Tennessee."
She loved the idea of moving to Tennessee. She just wanted to start over and do something different. My name is Jenna Holt Gomez, and Heather will always be my best friend. She knew what words to say to make you feel better. Literally 5 minutes talking with Heather and you would forget that you're even sad about anything. And Heather was really good at helping people.
I am really sorry that I didn't send you anything yesterday. And I hope you slept good and that we can talk soon.
Heather Nicole Maples is born August 23, 1992, in Ocala, Florida, on the eve of a record storm.
My name is Jennifer Hunter, and I am Heather Maples' mother. Hurricane Andrew was just hours away, but I had a baby during a hurricane, basically. So she was known as my hurricane baby.
I met Heather at my elementary school in Dallas, Texas. I was actually a really shy, quiet, introverted girl. I was afraid to speak to people. Heather just completely brought me out of my shell. We both tried out for cheerleading. We were so excited and so scared, but Heather wasn't afraid of anything, and we made it.
In 2004, when Heather is in the 7th grade, her mom gives birth to a second child, Ryan. When he's diagnosed with a developmental disorder, Heather's focus turns to her family.
All of Heather's high school years were spent with Ryan, helping Ryan learn how to talk, learn how to walk. She just immersed herself with helping to raise and take care of Ryan.
When she's not caring for Ryan, Heather lives the life of a typical teenager.
We spent a lot of time talking about boys. We talked a lot about what we wanted to do with our future.
Heather had wanted to go to college. She was interested in pursuing a career. She decided that she was going to be a counselor. She had always been that friend. She was that listening ear because she was such a compassionate person.
After graduating from high school, a friend of Heather's named Chaz unexpectedly calls and suggests she join him in Tennessee.
He told her that he was in Murfreesboro and that it was a great little town. It was also a college town, and that would give her a better opportunity to be able to go to school in a local place.
I remember she packed up her entire car, and I was so depressed that she was leaving, but I understood and I admired her courage.
In January 2015, Heather arrives in Murfreesboro, moves in with Chaz, and embarks on a new adventure.
It was a friend situation when she went, but I think it turned quickly into a boyfriend situation.
When Heather first moved in with Chaz, everything was okay. And so this was just a fresh start for her. My name is Kelsey Price, and I was Heather's best friend in the state of Tennessee. My first impression of Heather was, wow. I mean, I was in awe. She just gave off this vibe, this light about her. And I said to myself, this girl's gonna be my best friend.
Kelsey helps Heather land a job in the offices at the Cove apartment complex, where they both live.
We worked hard, but we also had a lot of fun. We would go bar hopping, go to the mall, go shopping, get manicures, just the typical girly stuff.
While Heather is thriving with work and friends, in April, her relationship with Chaz begins to crumble.
Heather and her boyfriend, they split up, and he moved out, and she was able to keep her apartment, so she didn't have to move again.
And in early August, she phones her mother with exciting news.
She was on the phone with me, and all she kept saying was, "Oh my gosh, Mom, oh my gosh." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "I was accepted to college. I'm going to college." And I was like, "You're doing what?" She was so excited, and I was so happy for her because that was something that she did on her own. It was her proud moment.
A week later, Kelsey Price opens the rental office at the Cove apartment complex and notices Heather is late for her shift.
She had a tendency to, sleep in. And so there were a lot of mornings where I would have to call her. About 9:15, I'm like, okay, Heather's not here. So I call a couple times. I don't get any answer. I remember her saying, if I don't answer my phone, just come get me. So when I open the door, I see her mattress and I see her laying there. And I'm calling out to her. I'm like, Heather, Heather. I walk over to her and I notice that she has a top on, but nothing else. And I'm like, gosh, she really got on one last night. So I look at her foot, I tap it, I'm like, Heather? And when I tap it, I realize it's dead cold. I slowly start to back out of the apartment. I was like just breathing and thinking like, what the hell is going on? I called 911 and they say, what's your emergency? And I say, I think there's been a homicide here.
I'm Detective Sergeant Tommy Massey with the Murfreesboro Police Department. I made my way over to the apartment complex and met with Kelsey Price, who was her friend and also a co-worker of hers. When I arrived on the scene, they'd already established a crime scene, had it roped off. I could see the body of Miss Maples across the bed. Obviously, she was partially nude. You could tell there was some visible trauma to her person. I immediately met with Detective Maples, the first detective from our unit to respond.
My name is Detective Larry Maples. I was a detective that assisted on the Heather Maples case. There was clear evidence of a sexual assault with semen, with hair, blood.
Her hair was fairly blood-soaked. We were able to note that there was some cast-off blood on the wall behind the mattress. Obviously, she had been struck on the bed, and then whatever object was used to strike her had, delivered blood to the wall.
The most gut-wrenching part was seeing Heather's hand still grasping the sheet, where you could tell that she died, and that she died a pretty horrific death.
Why does someone do this? As the lead investigator, it's very imperative to gain as much information as quickly as you can, because at that time, we know nothing. All we have is the lifeless body of a 22-year-old girl.
Detectives search for clues in Heather's final moments.
With a crime of this nature, it was very conceivable that this was going to be a little more on Heather's private life.
Friends become suspects.
There was no forced entry to the door, so it didn't appear to be a random act.
And a window opens to a horrifying world.
It was one of the most shocking videos I have ever seen in my career.
When investigators discover 22-year-old Heather Maples murdered in her own apartment, they begin processing the scene.
There were several identifiers on Heather's body that were significant to us. There was, semen. There was a presence of hair we believe was not Heather's hair.
As forensics begins processing evidence for DNA testing, investigators make another discovery.
To the right of Miss Maples, there was a bloody fingerprint at the top of the bed that was pristine. You could not have taken ink and rolled that fingerprint and had a better print.
There was nothing consistent with that fingerprint to lead us to believe that it was Heather's, nor was there any conceivable way that her hands would have been placed there.
Investigators process the print to compare to potential suspects and to submit to a national fingerprint database. And soon, they make another discovery.
We were able to recover Miss Maples' cell phone at the scene.
Without a passcode, however, they can't open the device. As they set out to gain access to the phone, they observe something else.
We also noted that the windows were closed or locked, so the only way in was through that one front door. So no one forced their way inside, so it didn't appear to be a random act at that point.
Heather's body is transferred to the coroner's office for further examination. With the support of Heather's best friend, Kelsey, Detective Massey then embarks on a harrowing task.
One of the most difficult things to do is the death notification to someone's family that their loved one is deceased.
I wanted to be the one to tell her. I wanted it to be from somebody who loved Heather and cared about her. Well, I called and I just said, Jennifer, are you sitting down?
I remember her just telling me that Heather's gone. And I was like, where is Heather? Because I knew Heather was supposed to be at work. And then she said, Heather is dead. I just remember screaming, no, somebody's killed my daughter. But it wasn't real. It didn't seem real.
In his conversation with Jennifer, Detective Massey learns that the last time she saw her daughter was 6 days ago, when they spent the afternoon together in Texas.
She just called about a week or two before and said, hey, I've got tickets. I'm coming home for this weekend. It was great to see her. Heather and I were together. I dropped her off at her friend's house, and I gave her a hug and a kiss and told her I loved her. I had no idea that that was going to be the last time I was ever going to hold my daughter.
Back at the crime scene, Massey speaks to Kelsey about Heather's living situation and discovers that her relationship with her ex-boyfriend Chaz has been tumultuous.
There had been allegations of abuse. I would hear her telling me about how he's got anger issues and he was abusing her.
It was a pretty scary thing because she called me. She was really upset and she didn't know what to do. I told her to leave and come back home, but she was determined to really make something of herself.
There were often times where I thought, oh my gosh, am I gonna have to go over here and intervene? But I helped her get a restraining order. I pretty much just took her under my wing from there on out.
He becomes somebody we wanted to have a conversation with about her death. Did something trigger him? Was this an act of aggression? And those are some things we wanted to know.
Before police can track down Chaz, something unexpected happens at the crime scene.
A young man came just about bursting through the crime scene. His name was Michael, and he was very determined to either get inside that tape, get inside that scene.
It's not uncommon in some cases that you will have suspects come back to the scene and interject themselves into the investigation.
Michael also shares an alarming piece of information.
The interesting part was that he had Heather's keys. No one forced themselves into her apartment, and she's dead. So certainly that's somebody we want to have a conversation with, and we got him back to our offices pretty quick.
He seemed pretty upset and despondent over the fact that his friend was deceased.
How do you know Heather?
I met her at the bar.
This is going to be rude, but I got to ask it because that sometimes details are important, sometimes they're not. The first night you met her, did you have sex with her?
I did not.
Okay.
I've never had any contact other than a hug. I've never even kissed her.
So you've never had sex with her?
No, ever.
Okay.
Michael may have had a little crush on her, but at the same time, he had a girlfriend, and I don't know if he ever acted on any of his feelings.
Michael then reveals that before Heather was murdered, he spent much of the evening with her.
What was the story on that?
Yesterday, she asked me if I was off work because she said she was hungry. I was like, cool, let's go to Old Chicago. Went to Old Chicago.
According to Michael, after dinner, he went home, while Heather went to a local bar with friends. But later that evening, she reached out for help.
She called me at 11:40.
So 11:40 she calls you?
Yes.
Okay.
And she tells me that I need to come to the bar. She really needs me right now. There's people hitting on her and she's really upset. And I was like, okay, I'll be there.
We learned from Michael in the interview, there was a situation where she was being, if you want to call it, harassed by a young man by the name of Artavio.
He was following her around and touching her, and I was like, man, why don't you leave her alone?
Michael had some concern about because he felt like he was being a little too, I guess, pushy with Miss Maples that night in the bar about trying to maybe have some advances toward her.
Shortly after the incident, Michael suggested taking Heather home.
We walk out the door. She's like, hey, I want Handlebar. I'm hungry. Will you take me there? I said, sure. She orders biscuit, gravy, eggs, 2 eggs, and sausage. And we sat there. When she was done, I drove her to her apartment, dropped her off. I watched her walk up the stairs, and she was like, okay.
He estimated that time to be approximately 2:30 a.m. the morning of August 7th, and that was the last that he saw her.
Her door had to have been unlocked, though.
Why? Because she had her keys?
Because she didn't have any pockets or anything in her dress.
You forgot to give them back when you dropped her off.
Correct.
Investigators take Michael's fingerprints and a DNA sample and set out to determine if he's been truthful about his evening with Heather.
We had ideas where she was, but again, knowing where she was and knowing what she's doing while she's there are very different things.
We wanted to retrieve the video from Handlebars. They'd been out there to eat, and that was their last stop before he drove her home.
The investigators pull the footage in question for insight into what may be Heather's final moments.
We watch it in real time, just like you would a movie. You have to look at these videos and hopefully gain something from it.
Investigators are reviewing security footage of Heather Maples and her friend Michael from the early morning hours of the night she was murdered.
We're able to piece together through that evidence that she had been with Michael. We were interested to see what would happen next.
While Michael seems comfortable showing Heather affection, the pair's time at the diner seems to match his account to police. But what happens after they leave remains a mystery.
Because Michael was the last person that we knew of to see Heather Nicole Maples live, he was someone that the police were very interested in.
After reviewing the footage, investigators turned to the medical examiner's report for additional clues.
They had ruled that the death was a homicide, and that the cause of death was strangulation and blunt force trauma to the head. The rape kit provided them with a DNA sample. That DNA sample was forwarded to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation Crime Laboratory for analysis.
When we did get the return of the fingerprint and we got the return of the DNA, Michael was determined not to be a match to any of the identifiers that were at the scene.
With Michael cleared as a suspect, detectives begin looking into the man he described from the bar that night, Artavio. But then they uncover new information about Heather's ex-boyfriend, Chaz, who she filed a restraining order against a few months back.
We learned that he had moved, but that he was actually back in town the night of her murder, which piqued our interest even more.
We just went in and conducted the interview.
While he acknowledges his relationship with Heather was rocky, Chaz denies having anything to do with her murder.
He said he hadn't been to her apartment in months. He gave us key details of where he'd been throughout the night. We were able to verify the alibi he provided us, and the time frame just didn't really fit what it would have required to have committed the crime. At the end of the interview, we asked him to consent to DNA. He agreed to do that.
With that interview, we were able to determine that he was not there, that they really had not had any contact, and was later cleared when the DNA came back.
Later that day, with two potential suspects quickly cleared, investigators turn back to Heather's best friend, Kelsey.
I felt like a suspect because I was the one who found her.
And you describe her as your best friend, right?
Correct.
What What was Heather's lifestyle? Was she a big drinker? She liked to smoke a joint? She take pills? Was she promiscuous?
She liked to drink. They wanted to get as much information about her and her life as they could. They wanted to know about sex lives, everything.
According to Kelsey, after splitting up with Chaz, Heather's social world expanded.
She immediately was so happy, so free. She could really spread her wings and fly at this point. She was just very charismatic. I think everybody was crushing on Heather. Literally, she was like a boy magnet. She had men around her all the time, staring and wanting.
Kelsey begins listing off anyone of note that Heather has been talking to over the last few weeks.
I told them about Brandon. She just met him and his roommate one night, not too long before that. She introduced me to them. That was the only time I had ever met them, and I never thought about it again, really.
Through the interview process, we knew we had a Brandon that she was hanging out with, but with a question mark, because no one even really knew who he was. He stayed on our radar.
I'm in Texas, and I don't know any of these people. So we're kind of stunned. Did Heather make friends with somebody who would kill her? We had no idea.
Investigators then turned their questioning to the night of Heather's murder.
Okay, so during last night, which is Thursday night, do you text her, hear from her, talk to her, or anything?
She Snapchatted me. I woke up and got a drink of water or something, and I saw that she had sent me a Snapchat. And the Snapchat was a picture of her and Artavio at the bar. They both look, like they've been having fun. And so I went back to bed. That was the last thing that I ever received from Heather. Yeah, that was it.
One of the concerns to us was the Artavio gentleman, because he had been with her that night. There had been a photograph of that.
What can you tell me about him?
I don't know a whole lot about him. He seems like a very nice guy. He's funny.
You got any idea why she would send you a picture of her and Octavio, why that's a big deal?
I think she thinks they're pretty good friends.
Okay.
It's conceivable that her suspect could likely be in her phone. Who do you tell your secrets to? Now you tell your secrets to your cell phone.
Having not yet gained access to Heather's device, detectives turned to Kelsey for help.
The detectives said, we've tried everybody. We've tried Heather's mom to get her passcode. Do you know it? And I said, yeah, actually, I do. I was the only person who knew it. So they were elated.
When we went through Heather's phone, we were able to start piecing together a timeline of her last few minutes.
Around the same time Michael claims he dropped her off, Heather sent a message to a name that investigators recognize.
She did have a text message in the late morning hours that she had reached out to that gentleman, Artavio, asking him to come over to the apartment. Did he drive over and kill her?
When investigators examine Heather Maples' phone, they discover she texted her friend Artavio, inviting him to her apartment hours before she was found murdered.
That was one of the last ones she sent out. At least we know she was alive at this time because she reached out to him, that he could have been the last person with her. We wanted to talk to him in case he was involved.
Artavio did know Heather. I don't know the depth of that relationship. We knew that he had been with Heather throughout the night.
Okay, all right.
What did you do yesterday afternoon? I went and hung out with Heather. We drank some tequila, and then we went to gyms for a while.
Okay, and who is Heather?
A friend of mine.
We pulled him in to interview him. We realized that he didn't know that she had died. And so we used it to our advantage to see if, is it going to change his answers to the questions?
I'll show you a picture, okay? Do you have any idea when that would have been taken?
It was a little bit before we left to go to gyms.
Who took that picture?
She took it.
Do you know if it was posted or sent to anybody?
It was on Snapchat.
Massey then asks about Heather's late-night text.
Well, if Heather says that you came back over after she got home, would we believe that not to be true?
Yeah, I didn't show back up over there. Heather texted me at like 2:30 or something.
Can I see the text?
Yeah, but I was already asleep. I saw it this morning.
Sometimes a lie is just as good as the truth. If you provide me with certain names of people you were with or locations you were at, and we can't verify that, then why would you be dishonest or untruthful in a case like this? People saw you go in the apartment. Phone records put you at the apartment. You were with her yesterday. Your picture was with her, okay? Because here's what I'm going to tell you at this point, Tate. I believe she texted you to come back over there. You went over there, and then something happened.
No.
And not only was this girl raped, she's dead.
What? No way.
Yes way, okay? And here's what I'm going to tell you. There's DNA all over that girl. It's going to come back, I believe, to one Mr. Tate.
I'll come back to me.
Once the interview had concluded, we asked him if he would submit to a DNA test. He provided buccal swabs that we collected.
As detectives wait for the lab results, they investigate Artavio's version of events.
As we say, everybody's a suspect until they're not. But we were able to determine that he did not respond because he had actually been with someone else, which made it easier to corroborate his story. So we had to mark him off the list as a suspect at that time. But at the same token, you're like, oh, it's kind of bad right now. We're back to square one again.
Over the next few days, detectives circle back to Heather's list of friends in search of new leads. And one name keeps coming up.
You got the mysterious Brandon guy from the bar, Could he have something to do with it? And could he have known where she lived? Could he be involved?
And it was interesting looking at everyone's notes where Brandon was written down, or Brandon that was circled. And then later Brandon was circled twice.
But something puzzles investigators. With all the accounts of that night, Brandon has never been placed with Heather.
We didn't feel like we were at a total dead end, but we'd worked pretty much for 7 straight days nonstop on this case, hadn't taken very many breaks, hadn't slept a lot.
Every day we had calls with the detective. He was very good at keeping us up to date. But it almost feels like you're living one of those TV shows. I was angry, I was sad, I was frustrated.
It's amazing how that relationship with a victim's family can drive you when you're tired, fatigued, frustrated. We worked for Jennifer at that point, and we wanted to make sure that we did everything that we could to make sure that at some point she could find peace.
On the 8th day of the investigation, as Detective Massey prepares to leave the office, his plans are interrupted.
That afternoon, I got a phone call from one of the directors down at the TBI Crime Lab. We had received a hit on the fingerprint that was submitted from the bed. Belonged to the mysterious Brandon. His fingerprints had been previously submitted into the APHIS system by a company that he was seeking employment with, and that they had had a match to the one we had submitted from the bloody fingerprint on the bed.
Once we got that fingerprint back, now all of a sudden this Brandon came into full focus and became the center of the investigation. Where does he work? Is he going to school? Who is Brandon?
8 days after finding Heather Maples' body, police discover that a man named Brandon Bowling left a critical clue on Heather's bed.
So at that point, we knew we were on to at least somebody that was there. So we spent that afternoon researching who is Brandon Bowling, where does Brandon Bowling live, how do we find Brandon Bowling. We were able to ascertain that he was employed as a driver at one of the local food establishments. He was actually working that night. I met him in the parking lot, told him we were working on a homicide of Miss Heather Maples. We asked him if he'd be willing to come to the police department and talk to us. What was his name? 14th. How do you know Heather?
We met at Jim's.
Do you know when that was?
Maybe 3 or 4 months.
There are different ways to interview different people. Sometimes you have to be gentle with them, you know. I tried every technique you could, you know, to be his friend almost, to give him opportunity to have an out as to why it happened. Ever been to her apartment?
I have been to her apartment.
The times you had gone over there, did she have to let you in, or was the door unlocked, or do you remember?
So I think she usually left her door unlocked, so.
Let me ask you this, have you ever been sexually intimate with her?
The first night? No, second night. Second time I met her.
You hooked up with her?
Yeah, we did.
When's the last time you were at her apartment?
That might have been in July.
At that point, we knew obviously he wasn't telling the truth, because there's no way his bloody fingerprint gets there on that bed sheet that night if he's not been there in 2 months. And it was still wet when we actually got on the scene.
Once we confronted him with physical evidence, you could see his demeanor change, his shoulders drop, head drops.
You know you were there, you know what happened. So now you need to tell me so that I can understand.
I don't know I was there. I don't know I was there. That's the thing.
Okay, well then how did your bloody fingerprint get on the bed?
There's no way I did anything. She just got accepted into college. Like, I was happy for her.
It seemed like he was starting to collect the fact that, you know, he's had, that we know it, we've got it.
I don't believe you don't remember what happened. Look at me, young man, because this is important. They can put you to death. Do you understand? Okay. Because this is the most important conversation you had in your life. The only way your bloody fingerprint got there is your hand's bloody. And you had your hands on her when you were raping her. Well, then tell me what happened. I thought several times throughout my interview with him like he was on the verge of confessing, but he never would. He never would come off of anything other than he'd not been there. At the end of the interview, we asked him to consent to DNA because we told him it could clear the case if he wasn't truly there. And I want you to just take one at a time. You're gonna basically stick it on first on your right cheek, swirl it around.
While investigators await the results of the test, based on the strength of the fingerprint evidence, they make their move.
After he basically would not tell us anything that we needed to know. Well, I'm gonna tell you what, at this time, Brandon, you're being charged with first-degree murder in the death of Heather Maples. Okay? He was subsequently charged with first-degree murder that night.
To build their case, police file a subpoena to access Brandon's phone. Detective Massey then makes a call.
It was uplifting, calling Miss Hunter and telling her, I just booked the man into jail that may have murdered your daughter. Because at least at some point, maybe she found comfort in that.
Detective Massey called me to let me know that he had caught someone. And it was a sigh of relief. But again, we had no idea who he was or why did he do it. I mean, that's the one question that I still have is why. I still don't know.
When investigators gain access to Brandon's phone, however, they gain chilling insight into his motive.
This is a perfect example of the things you can't unsee. What was in that phone will be with us for the rest of our lives.
As investigators scan through the phone of their chief suspect, Brandon Bowling, they make a horrifying discovery.
The video from the cell phone of Brandon Richmond Bowling was one of the most shocking videos I have ever seen in my career. You could see the room of Heather Nicole Maples. You could see the bed. You could see Heather Nicole Maples being raped. And you knew that at this time she was alive. It was obvious she had been beaten and she was suffering. The thing that struck me the most was that I was watching the final moments of the life of Heather Nicole Maples.
As parents, you want to know what happened to your child. So you have to ask the question, how did she die? Be careful what you ask for, because the answer you get is horrifying. It's awful.
And I think about how lucky we were to get a bloody fingerprint on a bed. Had we not got the fingerprint back, I don't know. Maybe we would have caught him, maybe we wouldn't have, I don't know. There's always the possibility that we wouldn't have, and maybe somewhere down the line continue to do what he did.
In February 2018, Brandon Bowling pleads guilty to the murder and rape of Heather Maples. He is sentenced to 40 years in prison without the possibility of parole.
The day that the plea deal was signed, I read a victim impact statement. I viewed that statement as the last time that I would be able to speak for my child and what her loss meant to us.
I forgive Brandon Bowling for killing my daughter. From that day forward, I learned, don't worry about anything and pray about everything.
It in no way meant that I forgot what he had done. I'm supposed to forgive, and so that's what I did.
I tell you, there was hardly a dry in that courtroom.
Once the hearing was over, we went out into the hallway, and his mother walked over to me. She was heartbroken. I was heartbroken, and I just gave her a hug. And we both lost our kids that day. I wanted her to know that I understood her pain.
Years later, Jennifer remembers her daughter's last trip back to Texas and her final moments.
So it was great to see her, that her accomplishments that she had been working on were coming to fruition. She was happy. You know, I can look through videos and I can look through pictures and she's smiling. You know, there was always a light there for her, for me.
She was an amazing person, a contagiously, beautifully incredible person.
Our last time together was at the office at work the night that she went out. We got off at about 5. We walked home together. And that walk home was the last walk home I ever got with her. She's definitely forever in my heart and in my mind all day, all the time. I can never forget her. She's literally one of the best friends that I've ever had. If you love somebody, you gotta hold them tight because you never know when your last day with them is.
I said, I love you. And that's the last words that I ever spoke to her.
We didn't know what had happened. Kelsey was just gone.
The clock's ticking.
We were just praying she's still alive.
You see a flash of a figure come up from behind her. Kelsey's not necessarily all alone.
It's just like your heart just drops.
Just tell me where her phone is. Just where is it?
Pardon my French, it was really an oh shit moment.
May 25th, 2007. Overland Park, Kansas. 18-year-old Kelsey Smith is graduating from Shawnee Mission West High School.
I remember the day clearly when Kelsey graduated. We were very proud of her. My name is Missy Smith, and Kelsey Smith is my daughter. Her boyfriend, John, had an air horn, and when she walked across the stage, he had hit the air horn.
There was a lot of noise and clapping and stuff. The principal asked her, is that your hooligan family? And she was laughing and said, yeah, that's them. I'm Greg Smith, and I'm Kelsey's dad. You know, I was happy that she graduated. I was happy that she hit that milestone. It was a neat night to see that.
Kelsey was born May 3rd, 1989. She was our third daughter. She was very inquisitive. She got the nickname No-No because she was always into things.
Kelsey was very, very outgoing, even at a young age. We had 5 kids. She was the middle child, so she went out of her way, I think, to be noticed.
I met Kelsey in middle school. She was very loud, and at first I thought she was kind of bossy, but like not in a bad way. I'm Megan Lang. I'm Kelsey's best friend. We were in marching band together. We both played clarinet. It was a lot of fun.
Every year, the marching band played at halftime at the football games. She took a lot of pride in that.
During her senior year, Kelsey's life changes when she meets her high school sweetheart, John.
When she first met him, she's like, hey, there's this guy, and he is so cute, and he's just awesome. And I was like, oh, cool.
John was over at our house all the time once they started dating. I mean, all the time.
They went to senior prom together.
We all got a limo. Kelsey had this big, beautiful yellow dress that looked just like the Disney princess Belle. And we had so much fun. After graduation, Kelsey and me were super excited to go to K-State.
I had always assumed that Kelsey would go to Kansas University because John was going to KU for college. And I told my wife, who do you want to bet moves first? Is it going to be Kelsey or John that changes schools?
On June 2nd, a week after her high school graduation, Kelsey is excited and getting ready for a big date.
She and John were going to go out that night. It was their 6-month anniversary, which I had no idea was a thing, but apparently when you're 18, it's a big deal. Kelsey said that she had to go to Target to get a gift for John before they went out that night. And while she was there, she talked to her mother, Missy, on the cell phone.
It was about 7 o'clock in the evening. Kelsey had called me to ask me about the gift she was looking for John. There was this scrapbook box that she wanted to find for him because she had given him a card and his mom accidentally threw it away, not knowing that it was important to him, and it really upset him. So I was explaining to her which aisle she could find this box that she was looking for at Target. She was just in a hurry to get home because she was meeting John for dinner. And then I said to her, I said, bye, baby. I'll see you when I get home. I love you. And that's the last words that I ever spoke to her.
A short time later, a little after 7 p.m., Kelsey's boyfriend arrives at the Smith family's home.
John came over to the house to pick her up for the date. He was so excited, but Kelsey wasn't there. Started calling and texting.
But she's just not answering, and I just knew something was bad.
A veteran police officer, Kelsey's father doesn't waste any time trying to find her.
Kelsey's older sister, Lindsay, and John got in a car and went out looking for Kelsey. In the meantime, I started calling police departments and asking, hey, have you had any accidents or traffic stops with this car or whatever? And I remember Lindsay calling and saying, hey, Dad, we found her car. It wasn't at Target. It was at Oak Park Mall across the street. Kelsey wasn't there. It was just her car.
We knew something was wrong.
And then Lindsay said, John wants to get inside and look around. I said, I don't care if you have to tackle him. Don't let him touch the car. I'm calling the police.
Patrol officers respond to the call at 10 p.m.
I'm retired Detective Sergeant Bob Miller with the Overland Park, Kansas Police Department. Kelsey's car was located on the opposite side of the mall, a good third of a mile from Target. The mall was closed, and it wasn't even parked in a parking stall. It was just kind of parked in a dark spot.
After the police met us, they immediately treated the car like it was a crime scene.
Her purse was found in the car, her cell phone, and car keys were missing. The shopping bag from Target was in there, which just adds to the strangeness and the urgency of the whole thing. And then the police noticed something was hanging out of the trunk.
It was like a paper strap or something. It set off all kinds of alarm bells. My fear was she was in the trunk.
Watching them open the trunk of her car as a mom, it's just agony. I'm just sitting there holding on to Greg, and he wouldn't let me watch them open it.
But it was empty. She wasn't in there.
And then when she wasn't, you're just like, where the hell is my kid?
The car was towed to the Johnson County Sheriff's Office Crime Lab, where they started processing for fingerprints and for DNA. And then the police asked us to come down to the station to be interviewed.
I'm Detective Candace Bridges, and I work the Kelsey Smith case. When I first arrived at the station, Kelsey's family was there. Her boyfriend, John, was there as well. Everyone was on a heightened sense of alert. Kelsey was, by all accounts, a good kid. Her father, Greg, was a law enforcement officer himself, so he knew when to raise a red flag to let us know this was something serious.
They brought us into an interview room, sat us down in there, walked out, closed the door. I looked at Missy and I said, "You know why we're here, right?" I said, "We're suspects."
The Smiths tell police that Kelsey left for Target around 6:30 p.m. and was supposed to meet John sometime after 7. But she never showed.
The timeline lets us know what she did before she went missing, which may sometimes hold the key as to why she was missing. And that became more important when we interviewed John a little bit later.
John told us Kelsey's very excited about going off to college.
But what John says next catches investigators by surprise.
John told us they were going to split up when they went to college. That's a highly emotional situation between John and Kelsey.
We asked, was she upset? Was she upset with him?
At that point, we were thinking John did something to her.
The race to find Kelsey.
First 24 hours pass and you become more anxious.
Clues buried in Kelsey's final moments.
We were dumbfounded.
I just lost it. I just fell apart.
And a suspect's chilling statement.
And he goes, "Yeah, I saw her. She had great legs." And just my skin started crawling at that point.
Kansas police are questioning the boyfriend of a missing teen, Kelsey Smith.
At that point, we were thinking she's upset at her boyfriend, John, or John did something to her.
We asked John, did he know anything that might tell us where she had gone? We went pretty hard at John with the questioning.
Because clock's ticking.
But John says he has no idea where she is or why she never showed up for their date that evening.
And then John showed us his phone. We were surprised. I mean, kids don't like to show their phones.
We learned that he was texting Kelsey's phone and trying to get her to answer.
We expected at least something from her saying, "Not now," or, something to turn him off or shut him down. But there was nothing.
To validate the story, investigators request John's cell phone records, which confirm that he was in fact waiting for Kelsey at her home at the time she went missing.
So that's pretty much what helped us clear John.
Authorities request Kelsey's cell phone records as well.
We wanted to know the last calls that Kelsey had made. Had she talked to somebody? Had somebody called her? So we set out to get her phone records, but we were told they were unavailable because they would require upper management to release them.
And as the wife of a police officer, I just found it unbelievable that I had so many obstacles. The phone was in my name. There was no reason for them to not do it. Just tell me where her phone is. Just where is it?
Next, detectives head to the site of Kelsey's last known location.
The Target store didn't open till, 10 or 11 o'clock on Sunday, the next morning.
So we called Target, and they opened the store for us and let us see the CCTV footage.
We're watching this video on the small computer screen. And we watched Kelsey. She parked and went inside.
So now we know that Kelsey did make it to Target. She was there and she was safe and going about her business, doing her shopping. We see Kelsey walk around the store, collect the items that she was purchasing.
She was on the phone with her mom. She talks to Missy for just a few more seconds, hangs up the phone.
She pays for her items, and we see Kelsey exit the store.
The video shows Kelsey walking out through the doors, and then the next view is the camera in the corner of the parking lot near where her car's parked.
The outside video shows Kelsey walking to her car, putting her items in the passenger side door, and getting in the driver's side door. Then she drives away.
And that's the last time you see the car.
Everything looked normal, just business as usual.
But investigators can't rule out something more sinister.
We couldn't say for sure that we had a missing person taken against their will, or if we just had a young lady who wasn't ready to be found yet.
Will this fleeting glimpse of Kelsey offer any clues to help find her?
We went on with the investigation because we had a girl to find. At the time, the family had already started searching the neighborhood.
We still have no idea where Kelsey is, and that was a really scary feeling. That first day, we all took out flyers and hung them around businesses, going door to door and searching.
Hundreds of volunteers will set out again today, passing out flyers looking for Kelsey.
I kind of just went on autopilot. I was also mostly running on energy drinks and no sleep, and it was a mess.
While the search for Kelsey continues, detectives are busy following up on their next lead.
The next morning, when the Macy's store opened, we obtained their video footage of the parking lot where Kelsey's car had been found late the previous evening. It is VHS tape, so it was pretty poor quality.
It's so grainy and it's dark, and the only light in the picture is the low watt lighting in the parking lot. And then a little bit after 9 p.m., you see the headlights of Kelsey's car coming in and then parks in the dark. Then you see the door open, a figure that you can't exactly make out gets out of the car and walks away.
We could tell that it wasn't Kelsey that got out of that car and walked off camera. You could just see the way they walked. It wasn't the gait of a teenage girl.
Investigators believe the figure is male.
So that was a surprise to us. We were dumbfounded.
After Kansas teenager Kelsey Smith goes shopping, she never returns home to her family.
It wasn't.
But the day after her disappearance, investigators observe something disturbing. Surveillance footage of an unidentified man parking Kelsey's car 2 hours after she went missing.
So we knew right away that kind of ingrains an acquired sense of suspicion.
Authorities then give added scrutiny to the footage that may contain Kelsey's final moments, in search of any sign of the male figure seen driving Kelsey's car.
My boss was a big tech guy, so we had a big command center with all these big Proxima projectors, and you could blow it up on a wall that was 15 by 12.
Rather than viewing it on a CCTV screen, which is a smaller screen, this time we watched it again with a different perspective. She goes to the store, she comes out the doors, and she's walking to her car. She puts her items in the passenger door, and then walks around the back of her car.
We expected to see her get in the car, back out, and drive away, just like we had seen on that small computer screen. Then, just a split second before she shut the door, you saw a flash. The second you saw that flash on the video, I felt that rush. You know, the room got very hot.
At that moment, I believe all of us stopped breathing. You could have heard a pin drop. I remember turning to someone and saying, "Did you see what I saw?" As Kelsey's opening her driver's side door, you see a flash of a figure wearing a white shirt and dark-colored pants come up from behind her. It's very small. It's very hard to see. It's blurry. We believe the blurry figure was forcing Kelsey into her car. We then knew this was much more serious than we thought.
Pardon my French, it was really an oh shit moment. At that point, we realized we had an abduction.
But police still need to figure out who abducted her and why. By piecing together the collection of Kelsey's final moments, investigators hope to uncover what happened.
We went back to the inside Target video and watched it again to see if we could spot anybody wearing a white shirt and dark-colored pants.
We literally watched everything frame by frame. I forget how many hours of footage Target gave us. Hundreds. It was overwhelming.
What we discovered is Kelsey's not all alone inside the store. She's being watched. When Kelsey enters the frame, shortly after you see this male enter the frame behind her, and this happens repeatedly. Every time Kelsey walks down an aisle, you see him walk down the aisle. He's watching her.
You've seen the National Geographic shows where the predator is circling. That's what you see. You see the suspect looking, and he walks past the aisle where Kelsey's at, and he locks. I mean, his head snaps, and he locks. Unfortunately, Kelsey's preoccupied. She's talking on the phone, and she's just not aware of what's going on. He sees Kelsey move towards the checkout lane.
As Kelsey's paying, he exits the store.
The camera angle's perfect as he's walking out the door.
You can tell he's in his 20s. He's got a goatee. At that point, we knew we wanted to identify this person.
I remember Greg and I going to the command center and them showing us the footage.
Once the video actually revealed that it was a kidnapping, it was just like your heart just drops.
The only thing that was really going through my mind was, he knows where my child is. I needed them to find him so I could find her. We were just praying that she's still alive.
An officer, racked by guilt, vows to make amends.
I was only 600 feet away when she was kidnapped.
And Andy thinks that he should have been able to stop it. He's hundreds of yards away.
Critical clues across state lines.
Captain Fredrickson said, "You need to brace yourself."
I was shocked, and I think all of us were kind of panicked at that point.
Leading to an explosive encounter with their prime suspect.
He was livid, and that's when he screamed in my face. He said, "This is all you got?"
After combing through surveillance footage, investigators identify a suspicious white male who is following Kelsey Smith and may have even kidnapped her.
Once we identified our suspect, we went to the media to help us find him.
Police are chasing hundreds of leads looking for this man, a person of interest, they say, seen on the same store camera leaving Target moments before Kelsey.
I was shocked, and I think all of us were kind of panicked at that point.
As Kelsey's story quickly becomes national news, one local in the community is working hard to help find her.
I'm Officer Andy Black of the Overland Park, Kansas Police Department. I was the liaison officer for Oak Park Mall, and on the day of this case, I was actually working there off duty. The evening Kelsey disappeared, I was doing the habit of smoking a cigar, taking a break outside the corner of the building, and that's when it happened. I was only 600 feet away when she was kidnapped.
And Andy thinks that he should have been able to stop it. And he's hundreds of yards away. Nobody anywhere expects him to see what's going on and be able to intervene. But to this day, I think he still blames himself.
It weighs heavy on me. I just wish we would have caught him.
Plagued by guilt and determined to find Kelsey, Officer Black volunteers to work the tip line.
As soon as the suspect comes on the TV and throws up the 800 number, we're overwhelmed with a huge amount of calls, but the majority of them weren't valid.
As calls continue to come in, one tip stands out.
We got multiple calls on an individual by the name of Edwin Hall. That name went into the log of all the other names that we had gathered from the TIPS hotline to track down and investigate. The first thing that we do whenever we got a name is we see if we can find a driver's license photo of that person so that we can indeed verify if they match the description of who we're looking for. And Edwin very much matched the description of the person from the Target video. So Edwin Hall was put to the top of the list. He was a local resident with a couple of different addresses on file. We ended up going to an old address that he no longer lived at, so we couldn't find him.
But law enforcement soon homes in on another suspect.
We got several calls calling in to say that that individual resembled someone they knew by the name of Jack. As you can imagine, just having the name Jack in a metro of over 1 million people, that's not necessarily going to be your best lead to track down.
Authorities have 2 potential suspects, but can't track either one of them down. Then, on June 6th, 3 days after Kelsey's kidnapping, investigators catch a break when another tip comes in to Officer Andy Black.
I got a call from a lady, and she said, I know that guy. She told me that he went by the name of Jack, and he lived in the city of Olathe.
Once authorities receive Jack's address, they immediately head to his home. When they arrive, they're surprised by what they find.
As they pulled up, they see this person packing boxes into the back of this vehicle, looking like they're getting ready to leave.
The man confirms that his name is indeed Jack and tells detectives that he was just getting ready to leave with his wife and 4-year-old son on a trip.
We didn't want to take the chance that he was going to skip town.
So at this point, the suspect actually willingly comes into the station.
With the clock ticking, authorities now only hope that they've caught the right suspect.
I got a phone call from my boss saying, hey, this guy, Jack, he's coming in for an interview. I need you back here now. So we were beeline it back to the station.
Four days after the abduction of Kansas teenager Kelsey Smith, authorities tracked down a 26-year-old suspect named Jack. When questioned, he reveals something surprising.
As he's being interviewed by investigators, he admits that he goes by the name Jack. That is his nickname that he's given himself.
And then he gave his birth name, Edwin Hall. So that was a surprise to us.
Investigators realized that Edwin Hall is the same person that the tip line had received numerous calls about, and that detectives have been trying to track down.
It all started falling into place as to this was our person that we were looking for.
And then that's when they started with some very pointed questions.
Detective Miller shows Edwin a picture of Kelsey in order to gauge his reaction.
Edwin denied ever seeing Kelsey, but then we showed him the surveillance footage, and at that time he says he's the guy on the video.
While Edwin acknowledges going to the store, he insists he's never seen Kelsey.
So he offered up DNA, fingerprints, anything he could do to help eliminate himself, which was quite surprising. And the county took those fingerprint cards and his DNA swabs.
Despite Hall's willingness to provide evidence, Detective Miller persists.
We went back in, and I basically just put her picture on the table. It was the picture of Kelsey inside Target. And I mentioned to Edwin, I said, so you never saw her? Very attractive young lady, you know. I'd give her a second look, you know, so I kind of went locker room talk with him, and he bit. And he goes, oh, yeah, okay. I saw her. She had great legs. And just my skin started crawling at that point.
He claimed he noticed Kelsey, thought she was pretty, and watched her, but then also claimed he left and never saw her again, doesn't know what happened to her.
And I said, now you're saying you saw her. Why didn't you tell us that before?
But a smug Edwin refuses to answer. In order to charge him, Detective Miller needs more evidence.
I knew he was lying, but was going to be let go.
In the meantime, investigators catch an unexpected break when a waitress calls the tip line, saying she recognized the man's picture on the news.
She called the police and said, that's the guy. That's the guy that was bothering me in the restaurant. The suspect, he went in there before he kidnapped Kelsey, and he was being real rude to the waitress that really upset her, and the manager asked him to leave the store.
Then the man leaves without paying his bill.
And he did like a dine and dash.
Upon hearing the news, Detective Miller immediately notifies his suspect.
I told Edwin, we're holding on to you. We're gonna book you for the theft. And so they took him downstairs where he was being booked. And Edwin was literally in custody and laughing at us. He said, this is all you got? This is ridiculous. I'll be out in 48 hours.
Meanwhile, across town, investigators are following up on a critical new lead.
As soon as Kelsey was reported missing, we immediately started requesting her cell phone records from the wireless carrier, but we were told they were unavailable. We continued to request the records, but it was 3 days before we got them. Once we did finally get her cell phone records, what we saw was the texts that John was sending to Kelsey's phone the evening she went missing. Those texts pinged off of the cell phone towers and proved to be a roadmap. We tracked Kelsey's cell phone pings down the highway in Kansas and into the Missouri side of the metro area. The final ping on her phone was in a wooded area known as Longview Lake. It's a public park where people go to, hike and walk their dogs. And so that's where we concentrated our search for her.
45 minutes into their search, they make a gruesome discovery when they find a female body that was hidden from view.
She was covered with branches. Her clothes had been taken off. She had a nylon belt around her neck. It appeared as if she'd been strangled with that belt.
Although they'll need a DNA test to be sure, the body fits Kelsey's physical description.
Then we realized that she's been the victim of a homicide. So now we go into full investigative mode of building our case.
Investigators have just discovered the body of a young woman, matching the description of missing teen Kelsey Smith. The Overland Park Police then alert Kelsey's family.
We got a phone call that day on June 6th about 2 o'clock in the afternoon that said, hey, we need to come talk to you guys from the police. And I said, okay. So we met him out in the driveway as soon as they got to the house.
Captain Fredrickson said, you need to brace yourself.
They told us that they'd recovered Kelsey and that she was dead.
And I just started screaming, not my Kels, not my Kels. But it was my Kels.
DNA testing later confirms the family's worst fears. The victim is Kelsey Smith.
Once we realized that she's been the victim of a homicide, we knew that we had a very viable suspect in Edwin Hall, who was being interviewed by investigators at the same time.
Shortly after getting the news that Kelsey's body has been discovered, the lab sends Detective Miller some pressing new evidence.
When Edwin was on his way out to the county jail for the theft, I had to run down to the car and stop him. They matched his thumbprint on the back of the driver's seatbelt buckle in Kelsey's car. I let Edwin know that he was now going to be charged with kidnapping and murder. And that's when he screamed in my face. He was livid.
The next few days were just a blur. We were heartbroken, but there was also kind of relief that we had actually found her.
After Edwin is arrested, the examination of Kelsey's body revealed that she had been sexually assaulted. They ruled the cause of death as being by strangulation. Edwin was charged with murder in the first degree. He was also charged with rape and sodomy. It wasn't until a year and a half later that we go to trial. Edwin decides to plead guilty to the charges in order to avoid the death penalty.
As part of the plea, Hall agrees to answer some lingering questions.
It was a long time coming for the family to learn what happened to Kelsey during her last moments that night. What he told us was that after he sees Kelsey, then from that moment on, he was hunting her.
We ended up finding out it was kind of a violent takeover. He rushes in with this pistol and shoves it in the back of her neck. And his words to her was, "If you cooperate, I won't harm you. I just need you to drive."
A terrified Kelsey complies, not realizing her life would soon come to an end.
Edmund Hall was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole.
Justice had been served. I'm very grateful to everybody that worked the case because they all did a great job.
With the murder case behind him, Greg will forever cherish the time he spent with his daughter, just hours before she disappeared.
June 2nd, 2007 started out as a fantastic day. I had all the kids and we went to a festival every year called Old Shawnee Days. So we spent the day there riding the rides. Kelsey had convinced us to get on the Ferris wheel. And her sister, Lindsay's like screaming and covering her face. Kelsey would turn around and look at me and just laugh. And so, you know, we had a great time. And so that was the last trip. That was the last time we were all together before she was killed.
As for Megan, she'll always miss her best friend.
Getting married was really hard without Kelsey. And literally right before I walked down the aisle, Missy brought me this little charm thing to hang on my bouquet that had pictures of me and Kelsey on either side. And then I ugly cried really hard. She's like, no, like, don't do that. So she was definitely incorporated.
Missy will always be grateful for the moment she shared with Kelsey just before she disappeared.
And I was fortunate enough to talk to Kels. She was at Target. She's getting this gift for John. I said, I love you. And that's the last words that I ever spoke to her.
Sometimes I just wish I could talk to her.
I miss her. I know she knows that we miss her.